Hello, this is the Steven Hour, and yes, we are back with another Batman 66 episode review. Today, we'll be reviewing the episode Deep Freeze, the part 2 to Otto Preminger's time as Mr. Freeze. So without further ado, let's get into the review. We last left off Batman and Robin. They were essentially put into giant frosty freezes meant to be turned into frosty freezes. However, with their virtually frozen feet, the dynamic duo managed to locate the heat exhaust valve within the frosty freezes and turn it so that recycled exhaust in the heating unit will reverse the refrigerative process and manage to melt their way out through the resulting heat transfer. Hey, I guess I got anyway. Returning to police headquarters, Batman and Robin are greeted by a newspaper photograph depicted the Cape Crusader wearing Commissioner Gordon's golden watch that was stolen from the party. And this is succeeding in his plan of essentially managing to lead Gotham into believing Batman and Robin has weakened to the temptations of bribery, and as a essentially ruined Batman and Robin's reputation. Mr. Freeze believes that Batman and Robin are now dead and out of the way and proceeds with his master plan to blackmail Gotham City, unless he's paid by the Gotham City fathers of $1 billion. Mr. Freeze will bury the city into one huge cake of ice. To prove his intentions are serious, he demonstrates his power by freezing the Gotham City reserve water. Gordon, of course, has explained this to Bruce, and when they see this, it's all over the news. Now, I like the scene where Chief O'Hara may Lindsay to ask Gordon, could Mr. Freeze be bluffing about the whole thing? However, he tells him that no way Freeze would bluff, but what he could gain by covering the city in ice would be revenge. Revenge from being forced to live away from society in his own torturous world of sub-zero temperatures. And with this all going on, Batman and Robin's reputation completely destroyed, Gordon has done the one thing that he thought he'd never do. Lost faith in Batman, which is the first time ever. And really just shows to Mr. Freeze what he's really done with the city. With this, Batman and Robin secretly pay a visit to Mr. Freeze's hideout, where they plan to take down Freeze and rescue Miss Iceland. Now, I want to point out something. Throughout this two-part, the one thing I have a criticism with is Miss Iceland's role becoming so much secondary and not even playing a much important in the role in the story, despite for a sort of character development with Mr. Freeze. And also I like how the scene is, how they said this line, unless she's found Miss Iceland is gonna reject, remove relations with the United States, which I found something to be really interesting. However, it's also revealed because of the thing not working of turning Miss Iceland down to sub-zero temperatures, Mr. Freeze is going to freeze her alive in order to do this. Just as they get there, they destroy the antenna to the TV and take out only one of Mr. Freeze's men to go and check what was going on. As Batman and Robin get further to Mr. Freeze, they notice Miss Iceland and all that ice. A bat fight then breaks out, but they end up being put in this essentially cage. Mr. Freeze then goes to call up Commissioner Gordon and demand the results. However, they said they need more time. He refuses, and Commissioner Gordon, Chief O'Hara, Mayor Linseed realize everything is lost. He then goes to freeze Batman and Robin, but because they're wearing their bat thermal underwear, they can't be frozen. They then put a bat explosive on the cage door, which explodes, blinding Mr. Freeze when Batman and Robin essentially punch and knock out Mr. Freeze. A first time ever, I think the dynamic duo actually laid a proper, maybe physical threat on Mr. Freeze in this type of way. And that's odd, because you think Mr. Freeze would be more of a physical threat. But, this is the first time, so I grant them that. A bat fight breaks out with the rest of Mr. Freeze's goons, and I like the choreography, it's really great. Batman and Robin essentially subdue all the goons and use an ice pick to get Miss Iceland out of her ice tomb, but they discovered that nearby Mr. Freeze no longer has his freeze collar on and is near certain death. And not wanting him to die, Batman and Robin put Mr. Freeze inside the ice tomb to keep him in sub-zero temperatures until I can get his ice neck piece. His neck piece to keep him cool. In the credits, it's revealed Mr. Freeze is locked up back in prison, and Batman and Robin plan to go to the Miss Beauty pageant, you know, because a job well done. Gordon then, of course, regrets how he gave up on Batman, and essentially, you know, the fourth wall break. It's fun. It's a good Gordon scene, and I like how Gordon just shows the error of his, like, you know, how he, you know, regret that one thing. It's a little bit corny, it's a little bit cheesy, but I like it. And of course, they say next week, Batman will reverse the Clown Prince of Crime yet again. Everyone's character just drastically changed in this two-parter. When essentially Batman and Robin, you know, realize that Mr. Freeze would think they're dead, they decide to go along with the charade in order to Freeze fully go out with his plan. But this essentially has resulted in the media ruining their reputation almost badly. And eventually, when they realize they need to call on Batman and Robin, Gordon has done the one thing I was shocked that he'd ever do. He lost faith that Batman would do it. Of course, he's proven wrong and he's regretted the decision, but I found that to come almost out of nowhere. It was actually I really give credit to the writers for even going with that. Maybe it may not have worked, but I give credit for them at least going in a different direction. Mayor Lindsay playing a big of a role I really like, really do, and Harriet and Alfred get very little screen time, but it's fun all the same. I like the scene where essentially Bruce Wayne and Dick are walking over the city, and essentially when this Mr. Freeze ransom came in, they got called in. It really goes to show just how much of an influence they have on the community. And of course that kid where he says, "Boo Batman," like for Bruce and Dick, that was like the lowest point for them. They felt that, you know, that in their mind, no other villain has given them that much woe than that little boy's boo. That's boo that he actually said that, and I felt, jeez, well, you know, they're trying to pull here, and I think Mr. Freeze has done worse to ruining these guys' reputation than perhaps any other villain on the show. I really think that the writers were really ambiguous with this, and which makes sense because Mr. Freeze is not an ordinary villain. Speaking of Mr. Freeze, Otto Preminger, for me, did a completely different take than George Sanders. Automatically, the look for me of this character is, for me, the definitive look of Mr. Freeze for the 60s TV show. The plan here is pretty ambiguous, threatening to freeze the city unless he's given $1 billion, which he plans to use to basically have this big ice wedding for him and his wife. And when he realizes this woman is not being, you know, turned into sub-zero temperatures, he decides to freeze her in order to turn her into that. The logic may be out there, but I like how he really wants this woman to fall for him, and essentially force her to fall for him. He has no humanity. How when they said they need more time, he doesn't give them any more time. He really is cold-hearted. He's villainous. He's vile. You just hate him, which makes sense because he wants everyone to hate Batman because everyone hates him. But this comes from a place, as Gordon says, this is all done for revenge. Revenge from being forced to live away, essentially from society, in this torturous world of sub-zero temperatures. And the only society that accepted him were the criminals. It makes the character sympathetic, but the sympathetic factor with Otto's take goes away very quickly because he's a more cold-hearted and villainous person. I like the bit where when he's knocked out, his freeze collar's gone and he needs to be, you know, quickly put in some kind of environment that will keep him alive. He's put inside this giant the giant block of ice that he throws Miss Iceland in. I found that to be almost comeuppance. Now, for me, Otto Preminger is the Mr. Freeze for many people, and I agree, for a long time he was with me. But George Sanders' version has grown on me, and I don't know which one's better. So, I put them, when I did my top 10, they were put on the both same picketing because I love them both. So the question is, why did Otto Preminger never came back? Well, first off, just because Otto Preminger didn't come didn't mean Mr. Freeze would come back. He will be back. We will see him next time in the final episodes of Season 2. But Otto Preminger, like I said, he was a famous director and he did some phenomenal acting jobs. But he was known to be a very big pain and even abusive towards people he worked with. Or at least, and according to Adam West, when it came to the show, all the cast members, or like the big actors' names that played the villains, he got along with them tremendously. But there's one he couldn't get along with. Well, three actually. And one of them was Otto Preminger. And he turned out to be very abusive. He annoyed the hell out of everyone, even though his version of Mr. Freeze was taken well very critically. The problem was that he was a pain to work with and annoyed the hell out of everyone. So Mr. Freeze was gladly meant to come back, but they didn't want to bring back Otto Preminger because of their experience. And I think this would hurt the Mr. Freeze character in the later episodes, because the fact they couldn't get a definitive actor to stay on as Mr. Freeze, either due to scheduling or, in Otto's case, poor work relations, the character would never really come back. And I feel that's a real shame, because Mr. Freeze is such a really fun and interesting character. I'm really upset that he never made a return. Nellie Majors is becoming more of a character that just continued to load as the episodes go on. And I will admit, I really wish she could have got like a bit of her comeuppance, like revealing like all her false stories, like got her just desserts. I really wish that we could have gotten that in the story. Other than that, I guess she served her purpose, so I can't really complain about what they did. I guess just how the episode was, but I would have loved if that happened. Would have just made the episode for me felt like, you know, like would have made, I don't know, just give a bit more with the episode. It's not which I guess is what you kind of expect with these type of episodes. I would have just liked we got a bit more of that. She's still a woman we hate. I wish she would have got her just desserts, but hey, she served her purpose and her commentary on these types of reporters. Deep Freeze. Okay. For me, this picks up very well with the first episode and keeps in with the same theme. If I could have a problem, I think it stretches the belief a little bit too far. A little bit. And that's nothing against the writers. I guess when they knew with Mr. Freeze, they could go full out now. Because, again, when they went Season 2, they went full overboard. So I guess, like, they thought, oh, there's no boundaries. Yeah. So far, this episode is consistently, however, despite that, it is consistently good in my opinion. And it keeps very well with the Mr. Freeze character, and I think that the writers on this episode were doing pretty well. Now, for me, this is I think this is one of Season 2's best episodes. However, top 10 wise, I wouldn't really think so. Again, everyone's entitled to an opinion, but I really do like these episodes. And I think, for me, honestly, so far with Season 2, they were still on a very good strike, and they will only continue to get, and I'm sure they felt they continued to get better, especially with the next week's episode's villains. And there we have it, Deep Freeze. The debut, sadly, this will be the last time we'll see Otto Preminger as Mr. Freeze, but this won't be the last time we'll see Mr. Freeze. He'll be back for one more round at the end of the season. Tune in next time where Batman goes up against the Clown Prince of Crime himself, the Joker, still played by Cesar Romero. So until next time, tune in to the Steven Hour for the same Steven time, the same Steven channel. Ladies and gentlemen, so long for now.